So, Owen, explain to the people out there who maybe don't know what it entails to be a bookie, or what the definition of a bookie is. What that means. What is a bookie by title?
A bookie by title, we're known as a bookmaker, right? That's the original term, and it started back in the day with the Italian gangsters back, a long, long time ago. But, you integrate to the modern day gangster that some people would call myself. I became this bookie that was someone that had an offshore server and an offshore telephone line. So when you called my Bet O-Dog line, whether it be calling the number or using your app on your phone, you were betting through my office in Costa Rica. So I tell people now that, in order to get a bookie back in my day, before it became legal, you had to know somebody that would refer you. It wasn't like you could just go sign up, because you got to remember, a bookie like myself, we're not asking for your credit card. We're not asking for you to give us money. We're giving you a line of credit. So I tell people we're like the American Express that gives you that, $10,000 line of credit or $100,000 line of credit, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, once you use that American Express sends you a bill and you pay it. With us, it's the same way. As a bookie, I give you, say, Herc, you know what, you got a couple nice cars, I'm gonna give you a $10,000 line of credit every week. But if you lose, the week goes Monday through Sunday. After the last game on Sunday night, I expect you to pay me next week, no later than Wednesday, Thursday. So that way I am able to collect my money in a timely manner, and then I'm able to pay the winning customers. So it starts to operate like a well-oiled machine. And the way I get my customers is only referrals. So if you say, hey, Owen, I got a guy that owns 20 Chevelles. The guy owns a car dealership. He's flush. I think you could probably give him like 20,000 a week. I'd say no problem. Are you vouching, Big Herc? Because guess what? If he doesn't pay you, I'm going to come to you and say, hey, Big Herc, guess what? Tony here didn't pay me. And I expect you to do the honorable thing. So I always had my customer base like that. So we were tight-knit. And if I had a problem with your customer, I would come to you and be like, come on, bro. What the fuck? You told me he was solid. So a lot of guys don't want to stick their necks on the line for their gambling customer. But that's how I referred people. And if you got me a customer, for instance, and you gave me a guy that lost 20,000, I'd give you as a referral fee every time he lost. I'd give you like 20%. So it became a game where people started recruiting their friends to gamble with me, because now I can give you 20%, and then when this guy loses, I can offer him 10% off his losses. Because at the end of the day, that's 70% in my pocket, 30% to you guys. I have agents that work for me that are getting 50%. So you do the math. I'm saving a lot more money when I'm giving the guy that just brings a player. And this business it's all lines of credit. We're not taking credit card. We're not FanDuel. We're not DraftKings. I tell people when I was in prison, I said, man, if I would have just stuck with the gambling, I probably would have been the CEO of like DraftKings, because I knew that business like the back of my hand.
So when you put it in perspective with gambling, we heard stories about Pete Rose, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, different people who have gambled and lost significant amount of money. People don't really understand how much money gambling generates across the sports. Like people think football, basketball, baseball, but then you have soccer, then you have NASCAR, then you have, guys are betting on horses. That's a whole nother, how much money, it's gotta be, what, $400-500 billion a year, maybe more, that's across, all the different genres of sports as far as gambling?
Yeah, I think it's like $8 billion, and that's just on the legal end. That's like the FanDuel, the BetMGM, the DraftKings, the guys, the big corporations. You're not including the underground bookies. You got to think, when you said Pete Rose, for instance, I've taken action with him. My friend Matt Boyer was his bookie for many years, and I remember, Pete's action was usually like between $1,000 and $2,000 a game, but he bet the board, and he loved the action. And Matt would be like, hey, you want to take some of Pete's action? We'd be golfing, and I'd be like, fuck yeah, I want some of that action. I said, that guy can't hit the side of a barn, right?
He was that bad?
Yeah, he was that bad. Oh. But he just loved the action. But you got to remember, I always tell people, you don't gamble to win, because guess what happens when you win? You just take that winnings and you play it again, right? You feel it when you lose. And that's what the psychology behind gambling is. Because as a customer that's gambling with me, they don't get off on winning. I bring them that bag of cash on like a Monday or Tuesday. Guess what? The next week they lose it.
Wow, they're right back.
They're
They
right
can't
back.
hold on to
They
it.
can't hold on to it. It's the vice, right?
So what about that? There is a guy, I read a book in the prison, and I forgot his name, but he used to gamble with Michael Jordan. You might know about this book. Remember the guy was like one of the GMs at San Diego Stadium, and he said he won like $250,000 from Michael, and it took like over a year for him to pay him. Do you remember that story about like the guy golfing? Remember?
Yeah.
Michael was a big golf gambler.
Yeah, big golf gambler. They say he's like a 2-3 handicap, and they say he's gambling like 50 to 80,000 a hole. Like my best win on a golf course was, I think, like 85, between 80, I think it was like 80,000 on one round, and that's what Michael's playing a hole.
God.
Yeah, and they say, he's on the phone calling his bookie, placing bets on sports, and then guess what? Michael's, betting 50, 60,000 just on one hole. So that would be fun. I would love to play with Jordan. You got to remember, these guys are hustlers. So they're saying they're a 5-6 handicap when they're really a scratch golfer. So they're trying to hustle just like I was hustling as a kid.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. You got to play at least a round with them before you start gambling.
Yeah. They bait you in there and you mess around and lose your whole house.
Yeah, another good gambler, not good, he was obviously a terrible gambler because he lost so much, was Phil Mickelson, the golfer. I have many bookie friends that say, he owed him a lot of money, and he stiffed a lot of people in the game. Yeah, Phil Mickelson.
What is your ramifications in a situation like that? 'Cause you can't go like, hey, bro, you just got to try to you try to baby him to pay you, hey, dude, just pay a little bit, and because otherwise it's not like you can openly, have a legal way to collect the money. It's got to be kind of like, hey, man, do the right thing.
You're right. Remember, we're a black market bookie, right? So it's not like, okay, you could go break a kneecap. Guess what happens? You go to prison.
Exactly.
So you got to treat it with white gloves, right?
Yeah.
So what I do is I usually try to take them to lunch. I say, come on, man, we got to pay this thing off. If that tactic doesn't work, I say, hey, man, you got to pay me. I say a slow pay is better than a no pay. I'd rather have $1 a day for the rest of my life than you telling me, fuck you, I ain't paying you.
Yeah.
Because then you're insulting me. Because remember, I paid you when you won. When you lose, I expect to get paid. That's the business. We go into this business relationships as bookmakers, we expect to get paid. So I tell people, I don't want to be violent. I'm not a violent person. I'm a big koala bear. But if someone disrespects me and tries to stiff me and not pay me after I've already paid them, that's like the biggest mistake in the business. That's like the biggest fuck you to your face. The most disrespectful thing as a bookmaker you can do. So then I get a little creative. I find out your wife works up, say, at Northrop. So what do? I send a bouquet of flowers and saying, hey, can you let your husband know we're just trying to get our marker paid off? And usually that works because once she gets that flowers and she reads that note that her husband's owes some money, usually 99% of the time she calls her husband and the husband goes, Owen, where do I pay the money? And guess what? I get paid.
Yeah.
There's always that 1% though that wants to be that tough guy and he wants to say, fuck you, do something about it. He knows we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So those are the customers you just write off and you'll just never do business with them again.
Yeah.
I've had people burn me, but I would say my collection ratio is like between 85 and 90%, which is very high.
Who would you say was one of the most degenerate? Some people you just look like they couldn't win if you gave them a winning lotto ticket. These guys are just, and you always look, it's almost funny, but you feel sorry for them just a little bit, but they're good. They always made you a bunch of money. Did you have some customers like that just couldn't help themselves?
Man, I had this, I'm not going to say his name, but I had this World Series pitcher that pitched for the Dodgers. And this guy could not hit anything he ever bet on. And I just wanted him. Like, I would go golf with him. I'm like, please help this guy win today. Like, I'm just hoping he wins, right? So sometimes I'm like, I feel so bad the guy's down like $250,000. It's Tuesday. I'm like, man, I hope he wins like something back. You know, his marker's at 500. He maxes out. He's going to be pissed, right? So I'm just like, man, please let this guy win. So I remember, like, I'd be gambling with him on the golf course, and I'd feel so bad. I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to fucking scuff this hole just so the guy wins. I wanted him to feel like he's a winner. And that's what I would do. I would give it back on the golf course. Sometimes I'd give like 50, 60,000 back on the golf course because I'd see his account and it'd be like down 250. I'm like, hey, don't worry, bro. I got you. I'll just take off that 50 you just won on the golf course. I'm just going to take it down. So it feels like that instant gratification, right? So that's the kind of method I had when I approached these clients, these VIP customers. You know, I had MMA, UFC champions. I had closers for the World Series. I had NFL's Super Bowl champs. I mean, the list goes on.
Did you see it more degenerate in the professional athletes or the working guy? Because I was just curious because maybe the athlete, because he was such a winner in his sport or such a high level of achievement that the gambling was like a release for them.
For sure. They're chasing that rush, right? You know, what do athletes? They're competitive, right? So they feel like they know the sport. So if you're a baseball player and you feel like you know baseball, you're gonna bet on that game that you're watching on your day off. And it's just a competitive thing, right? They think they can beat the bookmaker, but guess what? The house never loses.
What was some of the biggest plays? Was it, would you say, was it a horse betting? Was it on the golf course? Was it in football, basketball, parlays, and baseball? What would you say with some of your biggest plays that you've taken on?
Man, the biggest action I remember taking, I was at the Aria Casino, and one of my clients from, he was an oil guy, he was in Vegas, and he wanted to bet $250,000. He was already down, so I was like, fuck it. Like, if he wins, guess what? He's going to at least clear his marker up with me, and if he loses, guess what? I'm going to collect. I'm here in Vegas. The guy's got $1 million line of credit, so I didn't care. So I took the $250. And he ended up winning. But at the end of the day, it was still a loss because his account was already down. So it was like, it was just a wash, right? But he felt great. He treated me to the nicest weekend at the Aria. You know, he gave me the penthouse. He gave me, you know, all exclusivity. So it was a win-win for everybody. But I remember one of the best days I ever had in gambling on the golf course was at Pebble Beach. I beat my buddy Matthew Boyer, who's another bookie, a degenerate bookie at the time. And I think I got him for, I think it was $65,000 on the last hole. Oh, shit. And that next week, I took him for his Cadillac Escalade. He gave up the Cadillac Escalade. I remember that day was so sad because we just finished the round of golf at his country club, and it was in Aliso Viejo. And I finished the round. He's like, come on, we got to go to my house and get it, right? And he had this little girl, and he had to take out the car seat, right? And I felt so bad. I was like, oh man, a win's a win, right? And then
How do you explain it to his wife?
Well, he told the wife, hey, I lost in gambling. I got to do the honorable thing because he's honorable. So he's going to give the pink slip in the car. And then I remember the thing that almost made me want to tear up was when he had to pull out the DVD. I think it was like Snow, right? Some show, the little baby, she goes, my DVD, and she's crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what do? You almost feel like, here, take it back, right? But a loss is a loss. I got to take the vehicle. So I remember taking that vehicle, and I would just drive that thing and being like, man, this is, you know, this is it. I always would think about. I'd always think about that. I'd be thinking about that damn little girl crying. Man, and we had those TVs on the back, and the people would be back there watching. I'd look at them, and I'm just picturing that little girl back there. I'm like, man, I'm such a fucking asshole. Like, why did I do that? So, you know, but it is gambling. At the end of the day, if I lose, I pay, right? You know, another one of my favorite wins of all time. This guy, I wouldn't say it was a win. He was down like 30 grand, and he didn't pay me for 6 months. And I finally showed up to his house. I said, bro, come on, you got to pay me. I said, you got all these nice classic cars. I said, just let's call it even. Give me one of the cars. And he said, man, I don't want to do it. I came back the next week. He didn't pay me. I said, I'm taking it. Give me the pink slip. I want the Continental. And he said, oh man, he was so bummed out. And he signed over the Continental pink slip to me, gave me the pink slip. He threw the keys at me and he's like, man, I'm never gambling with you again. Guess what? A week later, he gambled with me again.
His market was zero. Now he was good to go.
He was good to go. He cleared it out,
that's
man.
A hell of a,
But I mean, there's all walks of life that are paying.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I had this Jewish guy that had this kosher meat, and he was down like 110,000 to me. I'm like,
110,000.
He was like clockwork, right? He used to pay me like clockwork. And I remember something happened with his business. He's like, man, can I just pay you in meat? I said, what the fuck am I going to do with $110,000 in steak? You know, he's like, it's kosher. Come on, take it. I'm like, man, I'm not taking any meat. But now, if I think about it now, I would love to have that meat. Right?
That meat would be,
I would put it on the freezer right now. Yeah,
oh my God.
I'm living at the Federal Halfway House right now. I'd love some meat.
God, that's crazy, man.
You know, AP watches. I've been, you know, given Rolexes. I mean, you take anything you can get. I remember one time I was in Vegas and a guy owed me, I think it was like about 50,000. And he paid me in Aria chips. And I remember he had like a mixed bag. He had like Caesar Palace chips, Aria chips, Bellagio chips. He just had all his chips. And I'm like, fuck it, money's money, right?
Yeah.
Because it's money.
Yeah.
If I could get something with those chips, obviously I could cash them out. So I took them. And it wasn't anything to him. You know, he owes those casinos that money.
Now, what about one of the craziest wins, like somebody who came and win and you're like, God, this person like took a lick, like somebody that hit you for like a big win? Was there any memorable like wins where you seen like somebody really just like, you know, crash the house?
Dude, I had these wise guys that bet with me. We call them wise guys because they're sharps. They're gamblers, professional gamblers. And I had this guy, man, I've never seen anything like it. He was a basketball sharp and he only bet college totals. And his name was Connecticut Dave. And this motherfucker, he could bet college hoops like no other. He would take the overs or the unders and sometimes the spread. So he bet like on a Monday, right when the lines came out. It would be like at -2 when he bet it. And as soon as he bet it, that motherfucker, that line would go to -6. He would get 4 points on me. Yeah, he was literally.
He knew his shit.
He knew his shit. And he beat me one time. I remember one day I was watching his college tickets, just win after win, and he hit 12 out of 12.
On a parlay?
No, 12. I would glad he didn't parlay it because you wouldn't be here
Yeah,
with me
but-
right now.
Yeah.
Single bets. He only bet single bets.
Oh.
But he bet 5,500 to win 5,000. So you do the math. That's 60 grand in one day, right?
So he knew how to pick, because there's an art to that.
There's an art. But this guy, his percentage winning and losing ratio is insane. Like anybody that hears about this guy now, they don't want his action. I got bookmakers that are still in the business. They're like, oh, Connecticut Dave, we do not want his action. He's too sharp. He's too wise.
Wow. What about, so as far as celebrities or people you can mention that you've had action with, is there anybody?
Well, I mentioned it in my book,
Yeah.
The California Kid. You know, my buddy, one of my best friends, was dating Paris Hilton for like 2 years, Doug Reiner, and I took some action from her on Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I remember I got paid through her assistant, and it was weird because I had to go pick up a check. You know, I'm getting a check. You know, I usually don't take checks. I don't like paper trails. I like that cash.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, these people are, upscale people. They're not going to just go give you cash.
That's
So it was
right,
a check, came from
Yeah.
an assistant. I deposited it, cleared, obviously,
Yeah.
and win is a win. But, I've taken bets from a lot of, big time athletes that I don't want to throw under the bus.
Yeah.
Because obviously they could get in trouble.
So would you say more of the gambling was through the sports that you witnessed, or were any of these people in particular like, hey, Owen, you got any card games? And this is like just the rush of just playing different venues, or were most of the people you dealt with primarily just on the sports betting?
No, the sports betting was huge, but then I noticed a lot of people started going to like these poker games, right? And I was like, okay, so these private poker games, so they like cards. So my partner and I from Costa Rica, we introduced some kind of live dealing. So when they go on our app or our website, they can play blackjack live. So you could go play blackjack, baccarat, whatever it may be. Whatever casino game you like, I have a dealer in Costa Rica playing with you.
Oh, wow.
So it's an extra $1 a hand, but you're playing live. So you're not playing against some computer-generated scam, right? Because a lot of those things they're rigged. I'm not going to lie. Mm-hmm. So when a customer is able to see the dealer and able to talk to him through the mic, they realize, okay, this is real. Like you're not getting scammed here. These cards are live, and that blew up. You know, that I was one of the first guys, the original guys that introduced the live casino. And man, that was right before I got busted, and it just started to take off.
So at the end of the day, from our conversation, it seems like the bookie game was a safer and more lucrative game than the dope game.
Oh, 100%. I don't think if we never got involved with the cartel and taking bets with them, I don't think you and I would be here. Because if I would have just stuck to the gambling, stayed the course, I might have been the CEO of DraftKings or FanDuel, because I knew the game better than anybody. And when I went to prison, I'm reading these articles, I'm like, gosh, that's what I did. That's how I advertised. That's how I got customers. And I'm like, these are all my old tricks. Like I'm the original guy that thought of giving people bonuses or free play or referrals. Like, and now all these guys are doing it legally. And that was hard for me to watch. You know, I'm watching this taboo. It's taboo to watch these sports lines while you're watching a game. Like, that was looked down upon. Now it's like, that's allowed now? You're crazy me. So you're in prison going, man, I got indicted for racketeering, for illegal bookmaking, and now anybody can gamble on it. Yeah. You know, you're seeing all these commercials.
Yeah, once it went corporate, it kind of changed the game. I mean, you know, they'll advertise for gambling, then the disclaimer would be, well, if you have a gambling habit, call 1-800-GAMBLERS will not. You know what I mean?
That's right. I mean, it's a drug.
Yeah.
It's just another vice. And with gambling, what happens? People want to drink. What do they want to do when they drink? They want to do a little bump of Coke. It's all part of the vices, right? Yeah. That's why it's an addiction.
Yeah, and then throwing the hookers in there.
But guess what? Guess who's making the money? The guys like the owners of the NBA, the MLB, they're all getting those endorsements. They're getting big money. And that's what this thing comes down to, money. Because who's paying taxes? You know, who's giving Uncle Sam that cut?
Yeah.
These big corporations. Me as a bookie, I'm not doing any of that. That's why I get arrested.
Yeah. It seems like, you said, if you're just kind of flying under the radar, dealing with your local people, you don't really have a lot of issues.
No.
Interesting. Yeah, man. You know, a lot of people, they don't really understand. They didn't, really, I guess, understand maybe before what a bookie is. So it's kind of good you broke that down. I know there's a lot of little ins and outs in there, but I know one of the just recently I saw where, there was a whole investigation into the pitcher for, the Dodgers and all that stuff. And they were he just signed I want to say like a gargantuan contract.
The biggest contract ever. What was it, $700 million? Oh. Right? For 10 years. That's $70 million a year.
God.
And that's one of my best friends, man, Matt Boyer.
Wow.
So when I got busted, he took over my operation, and he just blew up. And look at who he got. He got the best of the best.
You get a guy like that, dude. You just wake up smiling.
You see where that connection goes. I had that Dodger player. Now you see all these Dodgers and Angels like being involved in this. And he's great. He really stepped it up, and he went after the VIPs of all VIPs. I mean, to get that customer, come on. You think really it's the interpreter? If you're going to tell me that your interpreter is gambling all this money and losing it, and you don't know that the money is just being taken out of your account, it just doesn't make sense. I'd like to see what happens at the end of this thing.
Yeah. That right there blew me away. And then I think we spoke about it a little bit before, but the rumor about the Bruno Mars, losing
working off his debt, right?
$52 million, and it's like, man, I can't pay. Well, we're going to create this agreement where you're going to be like our headliner for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years until you pay this thing off.
Hey, Herc, I'd be singing for $52 million.
Oh, man. Hey, Owen, well, it's always a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming back. You guys know what to do. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Big Herc 916, fresh out.